Hey, everybody. Today is June 7th, 2026, and you're listening to the Wow We Still Can podcast. I'm Lisa. We've got Tina here, and today we have our friend Kevin Annett back to speak with us. Welcome back, Kevin. It's good to see
Thanks a
you.
lot, and thanks for pronouncing ANNETT right.
Hey, I finally got it right.
Yeah.
So, what have you been up to, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I could say the usual stuff, although it hasn't happened this way in a while. Out on the West Coast, the United Church, which ran a lot of these so-called Indian schools, and that I used to work for before we parted company over this issue,
Oh, we
they
potted.
admitted the other day that they have thrown newborn babies into furnaces right out of the blue. They issued this draft press release, and it came out of a place called Port Alberni on Vancouver Island, where it was one of the more infamous institutions. But the local natives were about to go out with their own knowledge of this, that they had witnessed it, that they had seen children being thrown to the ground while they were still living and being buried, that there were all these atrocities that are about to come out. So the church did their usual attempt to get in front of the issue, say, oh, yeah, we did throw babies in ovens. I imagine they're going to say, well, they were dead, of course. We're just getting rid of the corpses, spin it in that way like they've done in the past. But there's a lot more stuff coming out now, and it's being triggered by the fact that a lot of Native people on the West Coast now are going missing because of all of the Chinese expansion, the grabbing of the oil and gas. Lots of people, it's all about money, and people are in the way. So it's convenient to make natives go missing again. And I think it's because of that urgency now that this stuff has never stopped, that people are feeling more courage to come forward and talk about these horrible things. And the church shooting themselves in the foot again. This is so reminiscent because 30 years ago, when they threw me out, we held the very first protest we ever held in Vancouver. It actually was about protesting my unlawful firing for giving a forum for this in my church. Um, the United Church, the same day as the protest is reported, they issue a press release from their national office saying, we didn't know anything about any Native children who died, and we didn't try covering anything up. Well, no one had accused them of a cover up at that point. But you see,
Right.
by
Yeah.
by jumping out in front and overreacting, they're exposing themselves, and they're doing the same thing now. Like out of the blue, yeah, we incinerated baby. I mean, it shows you how depraved it is, when you come down to it, right?
Clearly. Okay, so just to clarify, we're talking about the western coast of Canada for anybody that hasn't listened to us speak before. And if this is a person's first time hearing that accusation, I imagine their first thought would be, that's incredibly atrocious and that could never happen. So can you tell us a little bit about the circumstances around why they would have done something like that?
Well, people, if they want to look at hard evidence, just go to murderbydecree.com. You can download the PDF of my 500-page research book I've done over many years on this, based on government archive documents, people's testimonies. A lot of this stuff is all on there. Evidence isn't the problem, especially since it's been officially acknowledged now. During the
Right.
pseudo apology in 2008, they made reference to all these things. Now they're denying it, which they tend to do. They tend to rewrite history, as you know, on any issue
Mhm.
all the time. But it's constantly described how this was a common method. Basically, they ran out of ground to bury children in. The death rate exceeded 50%. I mean, it was a policy of taking healthy children, putting them in with the sick ones, and letting them die en masse. It was a common way to depopulate an area. Like in the States, they had similar places all across America. And then they had to get rid of the bodies. So, this was a common method, but it was also used in other things as well. And there were these rituals that went on where children were routinely sacrificed. And we know about that as well from other sources, not just the Epstein stuff, but over the years, the things we've documented in Europe and all over North America. So, I mean, it's all of that really.
So the at that point in time, the government thought that that population was problematic. And so in efforts to essentially commit what could be defined as a genocide, they did things that encouraged the illness and death of these children.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then in result to that, they had to have a way to dispose of their bodies. Is that
Right.
accurate, what you're saying?
It is accurate, and it happened all over the world. I mean, that's the pattern of colonialism and genocide, that you wipe out the majority of the population through an initial assault,
Yeah.
and then you take the survivors and gradually eliminate them.
So in the
Um,
States, like, something that we can relate to, we
yeah,
know that, blankets with smallpox, infected with smallpox were given to the Native Americans by the colonizers here. We know that. So that would be something somewhat similar, right?
yeah, when exactly, and when you look at the definition of genocide under international conventions, like the UN Convention, they have five things they describe as genocide, and it isn't just physically killing people; it's preventing births, like sterilizations,
Hmm.
forced abortions. It's breaking up families so they lose their language and they don't know who each other is. And it's creating conditions that over the long run are going to kill people off. And when you look at conditions now on any Indian reservation anywhere in North America, it's designed that way to keep people sick. And I was just talking to people in Pine Ridge Reservation, South Dakota, and every family has cancer there because of the local uranium mining. They moved out all the white families, but they kept the natives on their land, and they're all dying of cancer. So I mean,
Hmm.
it's more of that ongoing process. But the thing is, like with child trafficking, it gets institutionalized right in the system, so it's more invisible. You can't see it anymore, right?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, like how we see the child trafficking under guise of nonprofits and,
Right.
agencies that are quote unquote helping children when in reality they just have access to them and can do the things way easier because they sound
Right.
like they're doing something good.
Right.
I see. And so now, so I'm thinking about the math here as far as time goes. So people are still alive that experience this, right? Like that maybe the mothers of these children or family members.
Yeah, I just met with four of them. I won't say where, but these women had all been in the Alberni place. I don't call it a school; it's a cover name for it. Um, Internment camp, death camp. The death rate was double that of Auschwitz, so we legitimately can call them death camps.
Right.
Um, and these folks were all there in the 1950s and 60s as children. They buried other children. And their own children are, even though they weren't in one of these places, they have all the effects, second generation impact of all of these things.
Epigenetics. Mm.
Right. And
Interesting.
it's kind of wired in. They it's often been said like it takes 7 generations to get over this
Yep.
stuff. But you got to be in conditions where you're not exposed to this stuff
Wow,
anymore. And
7 generations, that's a long time.
it
Yep.
is, yeah. Yeah.
That's why when we hear about a lot of these weird ritualistic stuff that these rich people are doing or these cults, it has to do with bloodline fit. They like to keep bloodlines going because the epigenetics are in there and the trauma is stored and they're easier to manipulate.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier on a different call to somebody, but 30 years ago when this first began, there was an article in the Globe and Mail. Did I mention this to you, Tina?
I
I'm
don't
trying to
I don't
remember.
think
I
so.
can't keep all my interviews straight.
I
I've
know,
done
it's
so many.
hard.
I'm sorry. Anyway, article in the largest newspaper in Canada, the Globe and Mail, in the fall of 1996, and it said electric chair haunts natives' memories. And in one of these Catholic schools, they had a electric chair in the basement, and they would put children in there to punish them, but also to quote entertain visiting dignitaries who would stand there and laugh. Okay, so if you can imagine the mentality of people who get off on seeing children get electrocuted, right? I mean, and yet that article comes out. There's not one protest, no follow up, no letters to the editor, never mentioned in Parliament or in any of the media, never no court case. People just say, "Oh well, they were Indians. They're not really like us, so it didn't really matter." There's no emotional impact. Imagine if they found out this had happened to white kids, right? Or
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
see
I
that
mean,
all the time in the United States. Like a white girl will go missing and the news will be wall to wall that. But then
Mhm.
you look at how many,
yeah,
any other ethnicity go missing on a daily basis. And it's like, why
yep,
this one right now?
yeah.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
That's why when we began to do our protests, we never talked in terms of Native children, but just children.
Right.
And it reached a lot more people that way. It had an impact because then they could put themselves in the picture and go, well, what if it was my kid in one of these chairs?
Yeah.
Well, and
My kid being
everyone's been
thrown
a
over.
child. Everyone has been a child
Right.
at some point in their life.
Yeah.
To shift gears a bit, it popped
Yeah.
into my mind just now. what's happening in Albania as far as protests go. The people have been out in mass like for several days in a row, protesting the takeover of what's the island? Uh,
Saison, say
yeah, yeah,
Cesar, Saison, some island.
which which was being the government there was allowing a purchase or a management by a company that Jared Kushner is involved with and Ivanka Trump. But you know, the thing that's different, I think, there is that all the people have seen this and it's in their backyard and they are just protesting like crazy. But in situations like we're talking about here, not everybody knows. It seems to get muted in the media, especially the mainstream media. And it's like it never catches on for people to have the opportunity to turn out in mass like that.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of segueing into like
Oh,
that book because people often say, "What can we do about these horrible things?" That's what
yeah.
all four Native women, when we were talking, they kept looking at me, saying, "Well, what do we do?" And I asked them the question back at them, "What are you going to do? What do you feel you can do?" And it's that feeling. The first enemy you have is not an external one; it's in your own head, your
Right.
own either the cop in your head or however you want to describe it. That conservatism and fear that hits people right away. And that's one of the first things we try to do is we address that in workshops or meetings. Okay, what exactly are people afraid of and why? And is there a basis for that fear?
Yeah.
And when you break it down, that's why, like I mentioned, I like to start meetings with music because it elevates it's
Hmm.
another part of the brain, right? It's another
Right.
way to elevate ourselves above those primal kind of impulses, fear
Right.
Well,
and
and I'd like everybody that's listening to know that, sometimes when we read a book, we're like, yeah, what does this guy really know about this? But Kevin has walked this walk, man. He, I'm gonna read just a small paragraph here it's actually from page 91 of your Truth Teller's Shield, a manual for whistleblowers and hellraisers, is the beginning of your title. And it says, in just 1 month, for instance, I faced eviction, permanent unemployment, and unemployability, the seizure of my goods, and a bill for colossal custody and alimony payments from church orchestrated divorce proceedings that stripped me of my children. I literally lost everything in a material and a familial sense. So you know firsthand what can happen for people that stand up for the right thing and the truth. And I can't imagine going through that and coming out on the other side and just carrying on.
well, Lisa, there's a double-edged aspect to anything, right? And the first feeling you get is you're crushed and there's nobody around because everybody backs off when they see that happening to you. You
Mm-hmm.
become the leper overnight, and they enable what happens. Even your friends and family and loved ones, they all go along with it because otherwise they
It'll
might
happen
face
to
it. It's
them.
kind of this
Mm-hmm.
primal response, right? But you then face a choice, and the choice becomes easier because the very fact that everything has been stripped away, you've got nothing left to lose. And that's why in The Art of War, which we quote voluminously in there, he says, never back an enemy into a corner because then they know they're going to die and they have to fight and they become even more determined. And that's true with any one of us. And it's happening all over America now when you look at it. People are now, their backs are to the wall and they realize we got to do something. And it's actually activating people more. So repression helps us. It tests our character. It strengthens us over the long run. Some of us, it causes us to totally collapse, right? And that's true. You can't deny that. But actually, I think the response is more commonly, okay, I'm going to fight now. But people don't know how to fight. They don't know how to link up. We're raised individualistically, and we don't think in terms of trusting others and working with others, right? So that's part of what we do in this book, show how we can overcome these things that are thrown at us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Thanks for
prepare
mentioning.
for it. I think that,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So if you were, running a meeting and you were trying to teach a group of individuals that had never had this mindset presented to them. This is a totally new idea.
Mhm.
And but the people are ready. They're like, okay, the current system is not working. Well, it is working the way that it was built, but we just didn't realize that it wasn't built for us. So, uh So, um, how would you start introducing that idea to people and talking about that with a group of people who know
So I don't
something's
think,
broken on this side, but they don't really know what to do?
Yeah.
I don't see myself as a teacher. I see myself as a catalyst. And it's up to people to learn from their own experience these lessons because you can't teach it. It's not something you can instruct in a classroom. You can give some ideas and prod people, but I think in terms of long term, how can we get people into a situation where they're learning from their own experience? So it's like Napoleon said, how he prepares for battle. I never prepare for battle. I start something and see what happens because life is dynamic. You do something, there's a response, you learn something, you go to the next step. So getting people to see it as a process, not as kind of as a thing to learn. The learning comes inevitably, right, when you go
Well,
through
you
enough.
know,
So,
Americans love a good self-help book, okay?
okay,
We need
okay,
step by step here. And also, as an anxious, well, me personally being an anxious person, like I need to know what the plan is. I am not a Bonnie and
okay.
Clyde. I have questions. And
I
so
get it.
this time is very hard for people in
Right.
with that type of mind. So if they don't have, okay, what's the next step that we've always had? And having to go look inside yourself and be like, okay, I'm going to have to sit and chill until I see what the next chess move is by the other side, you know?
Okay. Well, the blueprint's already in you. It's a question of bringing it out. And the first question I have to people, okay, let's talk about any issue that concerns you in their neighborhood. What's your situation? What have you gone through? What have you experienced? What have you learned from that experience? And often people will say, well, yeah, well, the system is rigged. Politicians don't listen to you. What can we do? And that's why I say, well, what do you think you can do? And somebody will say, to give you an example, once when we first started this process among Native people, I said, well, what's worked? What's worked for you guys? And he said, well, one of the older women said the chief took all the money that was supposed to be given to us for these healing programs, and he just kept it for himself. So I said, "Oh, really? What did you do?" He said, "Well, we're traditional. The clan mothers traditionally had the right to appoint the chief, so we took the chief, we dragged him out, we pulled down his pants and spanked him publicly and evicted him from the reservation. And that so humiliated the guy, he never came back, and we got the money." Right, that's how we got rid of this guy. So I said, "Oh, so direct action, right? That works." Oh yeah, we could have written letters to the government till they were blue in the face; they would have ignored us. But we just got rid of the guy, right? So I said, "Oh, so what does that
Right.
teach you?" So question, the Socratic method, right? You question,
Mm.
response, and then people see from their own experience. Okay, yeah, I guess that works. Rather than me saying, "Here's the blueprint. Here's what you have to do," and then it's all about my. It's a one-way process. It doesn't lead anywhere, as opposed to this dynamic question, answer, action, reaction, learning, next action, right? That's the process we're trying to set up, right?
So, two things I'm taking from that right there is I think that to be able, especially with how Americans are cultivated, um,
Mm-hmm.
with the independence, we need to learn how to trust each other
Mm-hmm.
certain way, and you can't trust everybody. So I think that finding the people that you can trust is going to be the initial step there. And then the second step is, or the second thing I heard in there was like, we have to just come up with our own ideas and not be set on one idea. Like
Like
we
our
could work out several ways that something could hash out, and this is our end goal here, but how we get there could happen multiple different ways.
like our own version of a public spanking.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do that too. They might like it though. I don't know. Might
It's
not
got to,
work well.
there was a really good book. The first book that was ever given to me was called Rules for Radicals by a guy called Saul Alinsky. And
Okay.
he was a community organizer out of Chicago in the 30s and 40s. The guy was brilliant, right? And he said, whatever you do, it's got to be fun for your people. It's got to be, so for example, they were trying to stop the expansion of one O'Hare Airport into a poor neighborhood. And
Right.
all the protests and everything didn't work. So they organized what they called a shit in. And they went into all the toilets in O'Hare
Yeah.
Airport and occupied it. And the
I could
airport
do
was
a
in
shit in.
chaos because people were trying to go to the can between flights and they couldn't. It was all blacked out. And the management freaked out and they started negotiating that same day because you had them where it hurt, right? And it was funny. Everyone was laughing about it, right? So you're mocking a big adversary. They
Mhm.
lose their power. They lose their cool when you're able to laugh at a
Oh.
bigger adversary, right?
Well, that reminds me of your recent experience in the airport in a Canadian airport that will go unmentioned. That, as I re understand the situation, you were detained for a while, and your circle of people were were basically threatening to show up and create a ruckus at the
Yeah,
airport, and they didn't want
yeah,
that to happen, so they let you go. Is that accurate?
that is accurate. And also, when I was being, intimidated by U.S. border security, I was just treating them as people and kind of trying to share jokes. And I began to sing, and that I just made it
Mm-hmm.
very human and made it clear that I wasn't afraid and I was keeping control of the situation without reason. Right.
Right.
Can you tell people how, because I think the first question that comes to mind is like, why were you in the custody of United States, you know,
Border Patrol.
Oh, so,
patrol? Yeah. And
yeah.
when you were technically in Canada, how is
Well,
that why is
because
that
in
happening?
in at all airports, the U.S. border security have it's considered U.S. territory when they detain somebody, and they could even have deported me out to the U.S. if they wanted. That's happened before, right? So I mean, it was just because of that, but and it was obviously I was on file and to check out and everything. I mean, it's don't forget these days, as you well know, it's very easy to tag anyone with anything and create a climate of fear around their name. And I faced that for many years, but you just breeze through it as if it's not there, right? And it's a discipline you acquire over time. You can't learn it right away, but you
Yeah,
have to
that's
nurture
I'm
it.
sure that to say that would bring some anxiety to people is an understatement. To breeze through that and get through it. I mean,
And Kevin,
because everybody's worried about their own safety. I'm sorry, Tina, go ahead.
no, no, you're right. Everyone is worried. And it's not even their safety. It's much like what we were talking about on that call earlier. Our families, and our animals and, anything that relies on us to take care of them. And if we weren't around, and the reality is they could just pick us up at the airport and we could disappear like a lot of our brown friends are. And you know, it's scary, but
Well,
also, Kevin, I understand. I haven't embodied it yet, what you're talking about, because I am a naturally very anxiety person, surprisingly. But like I know exactly the breezing through the okay, I feel it coming on. Is it real? Is it outside of me? And then being like, okay, if I don't stand up for what I believe and care about, and this is what I believe and care about that I'm standing up for, then I have nothing. So, just remembering that in my head and noticing the feeling of, oh, I'm feeling intimidated right now because I am pushing back on a system that has power that is wrong, and like feeling, and not even pushing it away, but like understanding that this is the only way that it can be right now. And if I don't
the
do it,
fear
who's going to do it?
the fear of something is always worse than the actual experience of it. Right. When you actually go through it, you look back and go, oh, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have worried
Yeah.
so much because it comes down to ultimately what can they take from you? Yeah, they can cause you to suffer. They can take, I mean, I learned that when they took my children from me. It was my worst
Right.
fear. Okay. It was my
Absolutely.
worst fear. And yet they're still around. We still talk. We went through it together. Okay. So that fear was an illusion. Okay. I know that from experience. You don't know that on the other side. And it's the fear, it's the what if control they have over people. What if? And I always say, get rid of that idea from your mind, replace it with what is. Okay, what is in this situation is they're bullying me. Say, okay, well, so what? Okay, I've got the truth I'm standing on, and I'm trying to do the right thing. And like you said, Tina, if we don't do it, some kid is going to suffer some more. So you
Yes.
lose. Yeah, it's like what veterans say in battle when the firing starts, everyone ducks down because they're still in the old mentality. I got to save my life. Okay, it's like when soldiers are in combat, the first impulse when the firing begins is to duck down and protect yourself or to break and run, right? But when you've been through battle, and you see friends get killed, there's another impulse that takes over and you forget about yourself. It's like when your child is in danger. You don't worry what might happen to you. You've got to protect the child.
Mhm.
And that second impulse kicks in, and that's what allows people to endure these things. And that's what happens when you go through fear. You realize there's something, a higher purpose. And it's finding that higher purpose that's the key to mobilizing people. Because then you're not concerned about yourself anymore. It's a higher fixed point. They call it like a Copernican revolution, where the universe doesn't revolve around you anymore. You're revolving around a higher fixed point, and that is purpose, protecting our children, a cause that's going to, get our country back on track. All of this stuff, when people live for that higher purpose, they can surmount overwhelming obstacles because they're not concerned about their own personal survival anymore. Because look, we're all going to die anyway, right? We've all got a death sentence
Accurate.
called mortality. It's a
Yeah.
question of how we use those moments, right?
Yeah.
And that to me is the power we all have within us, right?
Well, in
That's
the
true.
statement I try to use when I'm radicalizing people, I'm like, if we're not protecting the children, what are we doing? Like, what's the point
Yeah.
of being here if we are not protecting the most vulnerable around us that also the government is forcing us to have? So, like, what you're not going to protect the babies that you're forcing to be born.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, but that actually that actually activates the people that are going to be trustworthy and that you want around. So, using language like that, I found very helpful in not beating around the bush. We're past the beating around the bush. It's like it's happening. There is so much evidence. Just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Open your eyes. It's happening and they're covering it up. So what are we going to do? So that's a good way to get people involved.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really problematic that you have to be tuned into a lot of this to even recognize that it's happening. And I think the simple explanation of that is that the economic factors behind our major media, it's not, it doesn't behoove the companies that own our major media for people to be aware of some things. And
Well,
so we don't know.
and that is why they are criminalizing free speech, First
Yeah.
Amendment. They're really cutting down on what you can say because we really don't have the First Amendment anymore, in my opinion. And that's why they're going after
Mhm.
individual journalists and people like Kevin and people like our friend
Right.
Tony, who
Right.
recently got another threat from the government for sharing publicly available information.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
and
people are
it,
doing the work, but now they are stifling their voice or holding them in CBP holds at the airport and such. So, because you're onto something.
and
And
for people that are just barely paying attention to the media, look what happened to Stephen Colbert. He started saying things on his nighttime comedy show that the government didn't like, and now his show got ended. They did this similar thing for who's the guy on? We'll have to edit this, Tina. Um,
another late
yeah,
show guy.
who's the
Yeah.
other late guy?
Daily Show, John
No,
Stewart, not
well,
John.
no, it was they tried to push against his network and they
Jimmy
pushed back.
Kimmel.
Yeah, okay, so pause. Look what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. But the people pushed back and started, erasing, do, not following his network, and the economic forces brought him back, right? Or lately, 60 Minutes. Everybody listens to 60 Minutes, everybody that's 40 or over. And now that Barry Weiss is in charge of CBS, they're being extremely muzzled. And they just fired Scott Pelley. My God, he's been there forever. It's very real, the muzzling of our media. And right now,
One,
yeah,
yeah,
it
go
seems
ahead.
like independent journalism and independent people trying to express what they feel is the truth is the way to go these days.
I remember when COVID broke out, and I was talking to one of my friends, Frank Erminsk, and he lives down on Hastings Street. He's a Cree elder who lives on the street because it's safer for him. but because of everything he knows and has done. But he said, well, now you're all on the Indian reservation. You know what it's like to have a pass to move around, to have forced medical treatment. Okay. We've been going through this for 150 years.
Mm.
And then he said, ever hear of blowback? No. And it's kind of like all of this is not simply, it isn't some bad things happening to poor us who are all innocent. It's like we're all part of this thing that's created this problem, right? And the way we learn is by having the blowback and by having the things stripped away from us that shouldn't have been there in the first place, right?
Mhm.
And it's a painful process, but then you realize, you know, when you're dealing in a psychotic system, the only way you get sane is by there's a price to pay, and you have to go through loss and suffering, and then you come out the other end. And I mean, that's why we shouldn't fear these things when they come down. Our biggest enemy is comfort and security, frankly, when it comes to the whole purpose of changing things in a fundamental way for everybody, not just a few, right? And
Right.
so I mean, I think that's part of our learning, you know.
That's a good statement you just said there. Stripping away the comfort. Say that again.
Well, I don't know, stripping
I
away
don't
the
even.
comfort and
Like,
security. Well, I mean, gained,
It
you
resonated.
know,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, along those lines.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like people are getting to a point where they are starting to realize these things, and as the outside world gets more crazy, they are going back inside themselves and discovering, okay, what are my values and morals that aren't being told to me from it? Like, what is my sovereign self saying is my values and morals outside of religion and government and systems that are already created. And then once we gain the trust of other people in our community, that we can come together and figure out what's actually best for us. Which can and it can happen. We can do that, and it's going to be work. And just like Kevin said, a lot of the stuff that we thought we needed might be stripped away as a threat or a way to control us, but in reality, we don't really need it.
You know, one of the things, kind of the basic principle in the art of war is if you know yourself and know your enemy, you'll never win, you'll never lose any battle. But if you don't know who you're dealing with and what you're dealing with, you'll lose every battle because you don't really know what it is what you're fighting. And I say, if you really want to start, look in the mirror and say, how am I the enemy? Right? How am I tied into this? What have I done to stop any kind of change from happening? Right? And that's a hard thing for most people. Like it's this thing we do in meetings. I say, okay, everyone put up your hand if you want to change society, if you want to see society change. And everyone puts their hand up. And then you say, okay, how many of you are willing to change? And
Yeah.
then, and I mean, change your circumstance. Nobody puts their hand up usually because, okay, we can talk about stuff, but if we're part of the process, we have to embody what we're talking about. And we can't because we've been raised in a dependent, complicit manner. You're raised in complicity. Okay. And that was the advantage of me having everything stripped from me because, okay, I didn't have to defend any of that anymore. And I know that's a hard thing to say with people with children and a job and a roof over your head and that, because they're saying, what do you mean? Just chuck it all? I said, no, you don't set out to do it, but it's going to be a consequence if you don't give up and you stay honest and you stay righteous, if you want to use that term, and you stay on your purpose. You're going to start losing all of that. But it's okay. There's a new family all around you, like the new family I have, right? And that'll come up, but it takes, it does take courage, and we get that from each other as well, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I believe that I truly believe, and it probably it won't be in my lifetime, but people are always like, the excuses. That's what happens before the accountability with people that are going through this. They're like, well, this is how it's always been, or why is it my job to do something about it? What can little old me do?
Right.
And
A
I,
feeling of powerlessness.
yes, and being okay with it, which is mind-blowing to me. People that will argue about everything are
Mhm.
like, yeah, well, sorry, they've always eaten babies. My bad. It's fine. And I'm like, wait, wow, weird. Okay. But I do not think it has to be this way.
Well, and
I truly
yeah.
do not think it has, like, I don't care if it always has been. It does not have to be. I know that in my soul. So, how can I show everybody else that it doesn't
Yeah.
have to so we can do something?
And on a more practical note, like I saw a TikTok and it described with if you take the billions of dollars that the United States has spent on war in the last couple decades, 3 decades, the that same amount that China used to build infrastructure and the speed trains, the all these different things that are available for their people, that instead of spending money on stuff like that, we've done something drastically different. And now here we are. It's like when we're not just talking about, if you're talking to someone that's got more self-serving interests, trying to help them see the bigger picture here, that maybe they don't care that what's happening to babies someplace, but they might care about the fact that our society infrastructure is now behind another society's because of our priorities here, which is pitiful.
So yeah, I guess it comes down to that old difficulty when you do look in the mirror and you see what we're part of, right? And you start at a very human level, which is what always happens. It's interesting in other cultures, like with the remnants of indigenous culture that is still around. They start by always making it very personal and saying, look at the impact this is having in my life. What have I. And then you realize that a lot of the ideas in our head are just kind of fabrications. I mean, there is no such thing as the United States. There's no such thing as a corporation or anything. It's just a construct in our mind,
Absolutely.
right? Okay, so when you take back, it's really about understanding the nature of reality and how we've had a false thing put over our head.
Yep.
And when you start removing that, and often can get blown away, you don't seek out. Like I didn't set out to do any of this, but it was forced upon me, and I had to learn quick and change. And um, and from that, you realize, okay, well, things are not as it's presented to us all the time. In fact, there's a freedom we have, and this is why in the healing circles I discovered these two animal guides of mine, eagle and wolf. Right, they just came to me. They'd always come in my life, but I hadn't noticed them. Right, and I began to get wisdom from the other side. And the more I lost, the stronger that became. So there's something about loss and adversity that strengthens who we really are, right? And the fear keeps us from learning that. And you have access to incredible power. It's like in quantum physics, they say like every particle has within itself the totality of the universe. Like in every moment of time is all time, right?
Yep.
And you get out, and shamanistically that's what you do. You get outside of the false reality back into what's true. And then you realize there is no power over you,
Hmm.
you know, and you can go like that and cause change. Like I don't want to reduce this to some kind of rational explanation because it isn't rational, but it's one of the reasons that I've been able to endure in this whole thing for 30 years because I'm operating in other realities, that I didn't
No,
really understand at first, right? If any
Kevin,
of
we
that makes
talk
sense.
about that all the time on here. I'm serious. And
Yeah,
again, everything that we're presenting to people, I might not understand it fully, all of it,
yeah,
because it's like, what? But it is true. And once you start reframing your brain as the outside looker, as instead of being inside, it does give you a freedom. So
yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good place for us to wrap today. Um, Good talk, Kevin. Thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thank you
having you
both.
here.
Yeah,
Is
and I
there
look forward to
anything
seeing
else
you
you
more.
want to add?
Well, I'm sure you folks will add that in terms of upcoming plans. I won't mention that right now, but
Yes,
this I hope will add to that. It will lead into what's coming up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
absolutely. Yes, and I'm
Okay.
I'm looking very much forward to that.
Yeah. And anyone that's interested in ordering Kevin's book, again, it's called A Manual for Whistleblowers and Hellraisers by Kevin Annett. And I ordered mine through a local bookstore called Skylark Books. So hopefully people can choose to do that instead of the Amazon route, feeding the machine. Yeah. All right. Well, take care, everybody. and we'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Yep.
Thanks again, Kevin. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin. Always good to talk to you. Bye, guys.
Bye.